I love your rants, especially when they are based on the topic of feminism. The concept of feminism is often referred to in a negative way because of how society betrays it, thus making it difficult for some to even respect the strength, intelligence, and beauty of what it means to be feminine. Fortunately, feminists are trying to reverse the inequality that currently exists in our modern day world despite misogyny. Thanks, Connor, for another great video. What misogyny? Where is the misogyny in the Western world? I'm having trouble finding it. Also, I don't get why people use the term pussy to define weak things. Excuse me? My vagina can push out a fucking infant or blood for 5 days every month for nearly 35 years. Yay? Now, please enlighten me as to how pussies are weak. They aren't. It's just a slur used to insult a man's lack of masculinity, which I will explain later. I do it jokingly, mostly with female friends. You hit like a girl or something else, they do like a girl. But no one sex is better than the other. It's just another religious mark on our society where women are supposed to be inferior to men, and that should just be the way it always is. Where is it ever stated in society that women are inferior to men? In fact, women are constantly deemed superior to men. Newsflash, society evolves people, and girly things are not always going to stay that way. Things that were manly or just for guys aren't that anymore. Things that should only be for girls are no longer the same. No, they still kind of are. Want to live in society? Evolve with it? Or move somewhere that your caveman beliefs are still precious? You know, I say the same thing to feminists. Solid video as always, Connor. With you on the broiling of products, etc. I saw a packet of chips that my workmate bought today that were a man-sized packet, as if a normal-sized packet of chips isn't enough for a man. This is because men are typically bigger than women. What is your point? I don't know if this really goes along with this video, but people assigning genders to inanimate objects and things. Like most Romance languages, such as Spanish and Italian? Your point? Like it being socially unacceptable for guys to unironically like pink because it's a girly color? Do they realize it is simply a color and has no concept of gender identity or a concept of anything for that matter because it is a color? Or it could be that more women than men like pink. Again, what is your point? Women also consider being called manly or telling a girl she looks like a guy insulting. But I guess if you said that, you'd have to admit that misogyny existed, right? With that, of course, your female as victim narrative would cease to exist. Should I hold my breath? Probably not. How dare you! Oh, wait, this is a good comment. Now how did that get in there? Oops, never mind. Ever since World War II, our society has been striving to remove more gentler traits like tenderness, gentleness, compassion, empathy, and others from manhood. Society associates these things with being feminine, almost exclusively. Men are deathly afraid of being seen as being weak, which leads to domestic violence, and feminine if they display any of these attributes, whereas before this, men and women who exhibited these traits were simply seen as being humane. This hyper-masculinization of men is killing men because of the stress attached to not being able to be who they really are. Yeah, that's the reason why men are suffering. Give me a break. I always love everything you have to say, so this may not come as a surprise, but I adore this video. Ranty though it may be, it's necessary to discuss society's misogyny as a whole. I will never understand the logic behind calling someone girly, because to me, someone who identifies as a woman is no less of a person than someone who identifies as male. I also really loved the don't use identities as insults bit, because it's spot on. It's not always calling someone feminine. There's other things such as calling someone gay, like how is that considered an insult? I will never know. Thanks, Connor, for another brilliant video. People don't use identities as insults out of arbitrary hatred for them. People use them to insult the identities of others. If you are a woman, would you like being called masculine? Most women wouldn't. It has nothing to do with deeming femininity inferior to masculinity. Wondering what you think about the interesting dichotomy at play between men being criticized for creating spaces for themselves in typically female-dominated areas, like romance, yoga, etc., spaces in which all are welcome and nobody has to change anything, and women creating spaces for themselves in typically male-dominated arenas by demanding that the men be removed or not allowed entry and seeking special privileges and funding, women's-only clubs, activist movements, gyms, etc., and I'll also highlight that men are openly mocked and insulted by progressive people like the one in this video when they do it. And women would never have to take such an insult because anybody doing it in real life would quite possibly be actually charged with hate speech. Very good points. The way you're using female-dominated areas is in a very different context from male-dominated areas. Engineering, male-dominated area. Congress, male-dominated area. Now compare that to female-dominated romance and yoga. Which do you think is more of a problem? I like how you sneakily try to change the topic from gender-dominated areas in general to gender-dominated areas of power in reference to the glass ceiling. You know, a phenomenon that is caused almost entirely by women! Try again! Also, how is Connor mocking men in this video? I would hardly call questioning the purpose of Broga hate speech. I'm sorry if you feel that men are targeted in these discussions, but I hate to break it to you, women are targeted every day. On the street when men tell them to smile because they would look prettier that way. Are you kidding me right now? See, this is one of the reasons why I don't like feminism. There's absolutely no nuance. Far too many feminists and pro-feminists see everything through a narrow vagina lens, and it's annoying. Okay, let me try to make this explanation as simple as possible. In this culture, smiling makes you seem more approachable and friendly. In some other cultures, it doesn't, but in this American culture, it does. I sometimes get told to smile because that's not naturally something I do. It has nothing to do with misogyny or sexism. In the office, when they are called out for being bossy or bitchy, instead of recognized for their leadership skills. Again, there's no nuance. Feminism is that ridiculous. Being dominant and disagreeable are male traits. Being submissive and agreeable are female traits. Agreeable, obedient men and disagreeable, disobedient women are seen in a less positive light than their inverted counterparts. You're right, that is prejudice, but it's not limited to women. Again, take your damn feminist glasses off! That doesn't make all men the enemy, but it does mean that all women experience sexism. See, yes, all women on Twitter. Seriously, what's with this collective mindset? Why is it that you assume that if one woman is targeted, then that means that all women are targeted? That's not how victimization works. I don't get it. You guys are the masters of victimization. You should know better than this. Man, MRAs are so fucked up. What the hell does this have to do with MRAs? I hate that our society has to try to put people in boxes. So great rant about this issue. One of the expressions that bugs me is crying is for girls. That is such a ridiculous notion that guys somehow can't express emotions or weakness such as crying. And this somehow affects women because men are the protectors and providers of society. They have to be strong and not show weakness. This is a standard that both genders set. That, and the more you see someone as strong, the more difficult it is to see that person as a victim. So when a woman calls you and you confuse her voice for that of a man, you will not be apologetic because being a manly woman is one of the best things she could be? Please listen to your own logic. It's disgracefully bad. No, your comment is disgracefully bad. Oh no, wait. This is another good comment. How did this one get in here too? Well, whatever. Nothing to see here, people. It's just so sad that femininity is seen as something that is inferior to masculinity. If that were truly the case, then women would be seen in a less positive light than men. They aren't. I also think another part of the problem is that said masculinity has to be proven over and over again. It has to be earned by a man through his actions or behavior in order to be accepted. This means masculinity can actually be lost, while femininity is seen as something that you just so happen to have. And it never occurred to you why this is? Men, unlike women, lack inherent worth. Men have to prove themselves to be deemed worthy to society. Women are deemed valuable just by existing. My guess for this is that women initially have much more reproductive value than men, so they're already biologically more valuable, and culture reinforces it. This is also why women wearing guy clothes is acceptable, while the opposite is not. It's stupid. This habit of constantly policing each other by calling each other girly or by pointing out that someone is doing STH like a girl in order to validate their manliness is just so sad, and I honestly pity these people for living under this pressure of constantly having to maintain some sort of facade. If you see things from their perspective, then you'll see that they don't really have much of a choice. Just be true to yourself. Be real. We need more real people on this planet. Girls are awesome. Boys are awesome. We are all awesome. Hugs and kisses. Then stop shaming men for complaining about their issues to society. It's just so sad that femininity is seen as something that's inferior to masculinity. Actually, it's predominantly about punishment for stepping outside societally expected gender boundaries rather than femininity being inherently inferior. Masculine women might tell you a thing or two about their life experience. Also, there are quite a number of positive qualities that are societally perceived to be feminine, and quite a number of negative traits that are largely seen as masculine, e.g. egotism, carelessness, selfishness, cruelty, aggression. Simply put, feminine male, bad, masculine female, bad. This is also why women wearing guy clothes is acceptable while the opposite is not. It's stupid. That is actually because women have had a gender liberation movement that's been ongoing for over 100 years. That is, feminism and women's rights activism in general. There has never been a successful movement that attempted to liberate men from their gender roles. Another aspect is that men's clothing tends to be more simplistic, loose, functional, and utilitarian in nature, making it more viable for unisex fashion. While women's clothing tends to be more ornamental and accentuating. A piece of clothing that was designed to highlight parts of the female anatomy would look completely nonsensical on a male because there is no such part to highlight, whereas a male piece of clothing on a female would not, because most of men's fashion is not designed with such a thought in mind in the first place. Just look at dudes walking around in cargo shorts, and women wearing their tight-fitting ones that have pockets that are so small as to be rendered completely useless. Excellent comment. You made several good points. False equivalencies left and right. If there was a time in history where women were systematically murdered for wearing men's clothing in our culture, I would like to see it. On the other hand, to be a full-time trans woman or a trans woman of color can almost be an immediate death sentence out in public. Once again, you people don't seem to understand how these things work. Men and women are biologically and culturally predisposed to protect women. They largely don't show this trait towards men. Why? Because women are the limiting growth factor of reproduction. They are protected for a reason. Being transmasculine, I faced discrimination for a short while for being perceived as a butch lesbian. Not because I looked masculine, but because I was perceived as a lesbian, which, for some strange reason, is incredibly threatening to the traditional masculine archetype. The same way for a man to be feminine, whether they're gay or they're wearing girls' clothing, or if they're not even a man at all. There is something about it that terrifies men who don't think critically about their experience in the world. It's not about thinking critically, it's about aligning with gender roles that have been established for thousands of years. Like all animals, humans conform to established norms because back then that ensured survival. Not every grievance for women you have in society is because penis. It isn't because men haven't had a liberation movement. It's because the feminine is still in need of a massive liberation movement. No, it isn't. Women can pretty much do whatever they want in society nowadays. All that many of them need to achieve that is thicker skin. Because we live in a society that expects not only men to man up, but women to man up as well. No, we don't. Women can be the weakest, whiniest people on the planet, and everyone will still feel sympathy for them. The same cannot be said of men. That isn't the answer to our gender inequality, and neither is your comment. Next! There are so many reasons for girly being an insult. Not only is it seen as a weakness to be female, it's not. But oftentimes, females are applauded for being less of a girl or calling out girls for their bitchy behavior. But at the same time, women can't be bossy because then they are bitches. I already explained why this is. I'm moving on. But they can't be passive, because that is being too much of a girl. It is such a double standard, and it even impacts the way we view men. I thought that this entire video was about the way people view men. Why is it about women all of a sudden? I have met and seen men who have a hard time seeing the bigger picture. They can say, why is it not acceptable for men to wear women's clothing? People are so judgy. The reason is, of course, the way we view women. Woman this, woman that, woman, woman, woman. Not everything is about women, you know. Dressing up like a girl is seen as inferior because being a girl is inferior in our society. No, it's because, why am I even trying? You're obviously not going to understand. I have also met people who think it is a shame the pressure men get put under, for example, not to cry. The reason being, it is girly. Of course people should be able to cry without it being gender labeled. That explains the feminist phrase male tears. Oh wait, it doesn't! But people can't do that before they understand why this act is seen as shameful, because only girls are emotional, and being a girl is wrong. I just think there's a lot of internalized misogyny in the world, and once we understand our patterns, we can finally break them. Internalized misogyny, huh? Well, at least this one is acknowledging that women are partly at fault for reinforcing these gender standards. Too bad this person seems to conflate that with internalized misogyny. Misogyny is the hatred, mistrust, or opposition of women. Wanting women to follow gender roles is not misogyny. Period. I'm sorry if my English was confusing. I'm not a native speaker. Essentially, my point is that this video is very, very good and also very important. Your English was fine, actually. Too bad your argument wasn't. Also, no, this video is anything but good and important. In sociology, oh, that explains it. Shh. They teach us this idea. Why am I not surprised? The reason they compare men to women shows that they view women as lesser. No, the reason for that is to insult a man's masculinity. If you call a man something that isn't masculine, it hurts his identity because it would go against being who he is. A man. This is not rocket science. The sad fact. You're the last one to speak of facts. As always, a great video and topic to cover. This is something that I've thought about at length in my 20s. It really bothers me that so many men grow up with this attitude that women are inferior, whether they realize it or not. And they don't realize it because most of them don't actually have that attitude. If men seriously thought that women were inferior to them, women would be treated much worse than they normally are. Logic, people! And as a result, insulting somebody that marginalizes their masculinity is the worst way to cut deep into another male. Because they want to be seen as men! Christ, it's not that hard to understand! Calling a guy a girl, girly, a bitch, a pussy, etc. These are all female gender specific. As a gay male and as a result having to deal with anti-gay bullying growing up, though I was closeted for those years, I truly feel like this is the root, the core of homophobia in our society. No, it's because homosexuality is not the norm in society. When you don't conform to societal norms, people give you crap over it. It's not because vagina. We obviously have some more feminine traits than usual, and we're looked down upon for that by the same kind of men in society, because again, being compared to the female sex is for some stupid reasoning the worst thing you can say. Again, it's because it goes against the core of their identity, being male. It's men like that I'd personally not like to be compared to. That would be an insult to me. Love you, Connor. Hugs and kisses. Good for you, honey. Actually, being called a girl is an insult. It's basically taking your identity and saying, you're wrong, you're not that. It's the same thing with identifying as a nerd, and then someone goes up to you and says, no, you're not. Would you be offended? Yes. Is there anything wrong with being a nerd? No. Is there anything wrong with not being a nerd? No, but you are still offended because your identity has come into question. If a man wants to be seen as a man, calling him a woman is also questioning who he is or who he wants to be. That man may not even have a problem with women. If that man wants to be seen as a girly man, then it wouldn't offend him personally. Saying girly is not an insult to you, but that doesn't mean it's not an insult at all. Let's say that man is transgender. He could be offended when you insist on referring to him as a woman. He obviously doesn't have a problem with women. Calling a woman a man is less common. But how often do you honestly see a manly woman? I don't think you do. And they have a name for manly women. It's called a tomboy. Also, a lot of women would prefer to be referred to as girls instead of women. Does this mean that they have a problem with a more authoritative female? No, they just don't want their identity to be taken from them. And one last thing. You could also take this and flip it around and say, men are the only gender who is slandered for doing girly things. He's called gay by everyone, etc. No, that's not true! Wait a minute. Another good comment's gone to this episode? Why does that keep happening? Oh well, let's keep going. I used to get so offended when people would mention that something I liked was girly, or that I spoke in a girly way as if something was wrong. As if being a girl is being less than a person, and that's just so fucked up. The worst thing is that sometimes girls are the ones pointing out those things. I do still have hope in society though, but it's things I learned in 2014, and femininity is still considered weaker and inferior. I'm tired of explaining this. I'll let someone else do it. I completely understand your frustrations and agree with you. Why? There's nothing to agree with! The worst thing is that sometimes girls are the ones pointing out those things. You don't say! Good point. Seeing as you're never going to figure this out on your own, the reason why it's insulting is because girls don't want to fuck girly men. It's a form of pre-selection that excludes you, and you should find it offensive. And meekly groveling to feminists isn't going to improve your prospects either. Exactly. Thank you. These are standards that both genders set in society. I mean, can you honestly tell me that most women would want to be with an effeminate man? I don't really think so. And this is something that baffles me. These people say that they want men to be more sensitive, emotional, and girly. And when men do that, they're abandoned faster than the speed of light. It's so ridiculous. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with being a girly or gay man, but for fuck's sake, feminists, gain some goddamn perspective!